Welcome to issue 217 of Critical Encounters, a podcast about Marvel Champions, a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. Here, we take a good look at that most critical piece of the game, the encounter sets. We'll discuss those poorly understood characters' unfairly labeled villains, and their various plans to shape humanity and benefit the planet, as well as those so-called heroes intent on thwarting them. I'm one of your hosts, Scott, and with me is Steve.
Hey, Scott. How's it going?
It's going all right. Josh.
Howdy, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Welcome back, Josh. I'm so excited to be on the show with you, and also Daniel.
Hey, welcome back, fellas, to the lair. Grateful
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you.
us.
I'm
Yep,
glad to be
absolutely.
back. Beats Cooterman's Creek.
There's a special thrill associated in my mind now with the strange funk of descending into the lair.
We're good.
I'm sorry. That's mostly me. Hasn't quite aired out from the last time.
Everyone brings their own particular musk.
If I could find it, I'd clean it up.
Oh, good golly. All right.
Well, we have two fan favorite returning folks. Josh from The Hills Have Nerds. Josh, thanks for coming back.
Pleasure.
And Scott Lexicon from recent. You were on a recent show, right?
Recent
fame.
Recent
Fame. Yeah.
Recent fame.
And Daniel and I are both here too.
I'm gonna ride that recent fame like it.
There you go.
Nothing historically ever happened to Icarus. That's all great.
Right.
Everything turned out wonderful.
I didn't finish the story. Is there something wrong?
Nah, I wouldn't worry about
No,
it.
just you're fine.
It's like Daniel. You just never read the bottom half of the card. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
God, you win games so much more.
Yeah.
Took a swing at Daniel right out of the gate. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to do a special issue tonight. We have two folks on. Makes four. We can count. And it's going to be something we haven't done in a long time. It's something that Daniel brought up. But before we do that, we do have to ask Daniel what is on his mind tonight.
I have something. I was thinking about it too. So this was inspired by Mustafa. So I went over there tonight. So my daughter does basketball practice very close to his house. So while she's doing that, I will noodle over there and we'll play games. We'll do stuff. But I brought over to his house today a whole bunch of Lorcana cards and Flesh and Blood cards to give to his kids. And what I want to talk about is willpower or lack thereof to resist games. So like I'm not a rich fella, but then like things will show up like Slay the Spire, and I'm like, oh, that looks cool, and so I'll kind of Kickstarter that or whatever. And now, Steve, I know you're in this too. Like Star Wars Unlimited is out, and I love Star Wars, but I hate head-to-head card games. But Steve, I still bought the starter deck and a whole booster box and some other random booster packs. I won't play this game competitively. I won't care much about it. I don't spend time on secondary markets, but I don't know how to stop myself. So I was really hoping that you three could help me out. Give me a little bit of advice, because it's crazy. And then I'm at the game store buying the Age of Apocalypse that they put on hold for me because I got a subscription there. It's just money pouring out, and I don't have time for these games. I'm certainly not going to play like the Star Wars very much. Steve, you and I might play at the end of the month, but Lord, I can't. It's like, oh, that looks cool, and then I try to think about how I would not buy it, and all that does is make me put it in a cart.
I don't know if I'm the right person to give advice on this, Daniel, because as I look over at my board game shelf, I see about 10 still in shrink wrap.
Okay, yeah. Josh? What's your percent played of all the games you own?
Oh, I mean, probably like 95%.
Oh, that's great.
At least. Me and another boy on the podcast, y'all here, Aaron, we told ourselves a couple years ago that we were not going to buy any more board games till we went through our backlog.
Nice.
And we stuck to that until at least the end of that night.
Awesome.
Very
weekend or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
I think
me, that is
we
a
might have made
shining
it.
example. That is a shining example of willpower.
Man,
Gosh, really.
it's the same way people collect cars or anything. You know, we talked about this on our podcast and stuff. That, you know, if it makes you happy and you can pay your
That's right.
bills, you're not starving to death.
That's
your
right.
family's taken care of. Who the hell cares what these people?
It's not about it's not about like, yes, I'm still feeding my family and all that kind of works out, but it's just like I look at this sort of there is a waste there, right?
Yeah.
And in that, especially like when I go upstairs to the library where I have a shelf full of RPGs that I've never played from, and these are from like the 90s on up. And
did you read the books though? Did you read them?
But I read the books. I look
That's
at
okay,
them. I treat them kind of like coffee table book art sort of things.
Sure.
Is it a collection, or are you buying it to get the value? Like, are you buying it for the interaction, or are you buying it for the shelf space? Like,
well, that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Like Arkham Horror, the LCG, I've maybe played 4 hands, but I have
all of it,
most of it. But it is purely, and I understand that it is a collector's item because when I played it, I didn't enjoy playing it. I felt like if I was going to interact with that world, with Cthulhu, I'd play Call of Cthulhu. That's my favorite tabletop RPG. I prefer interacting with that world in that way. Whereas the LCG, I just still enjoy all of that stuff, so I wanted to own it. If that
sure.
makes sense.
I get that. No, for me, like with RPGs especially, I'll fool myself into believing that someone will play these RPGs. Usually, it's my 2 daughters who have no interest. Really, they play D&D with me and like want to all the time, but like learning a new system or something, it's not. Even Avatar, like I got all in on the new Avatar thing, and it's beautiful. It's great. And it's one of their favorite shows, but it's a whole new thing to learn and a system. And they're like, but we like our D&D characters. So anyway, I'll trick myself. But what do you think, Scott? Where are you at in all this stuff?
I'm a little bit on a different part of the spectrum there. So my wife and I are notorious about putting things in our cart and not buying them. So I am very much not so much ruled by FOMO as I am, I hate spending money. So there were a lot of things, and I played CCGs when I was younger. I went way in on the Star Wars CCG by Decipher, way back in the day, which I still have at least 10,000 cards, despite having given away 3 times that.
I love it.
So there is some element of I only want to have so much. We're probably at about 99% of the games we've played at least twice, if not more than that. So we usually are pretty good at playing our games together before we get new stuff, and once we get new stuff, we like play it right away. But I do think I kind of agree with Josh, where there's an element of sometimes we get it because I'm just excited to look at it, or like I picked up copies of an old not Battlestar Galactica, old Babylon 5 card game, because I love the Babylon 5 series. I think it's phenomenal. And we haven't played that yet. We might someday, but I enjoyed looking through the cards. There was sort of a nostalgia element to it, and I enjoyed it.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So that felt good. I think as long as there's an element of like, I really enjoy having it, and I'm excited to someday play it in the same way that, for example, we might purchase a book and enjoy having it on our shelf and saying, I'm excited to maybe get to that book one day. I like having it available. It's one I'm really interested in. I'm not reading it right now, but I still like having it there. And I think it's okay to treat games the same way. Games are not some sort of like taboo thing in our closet that's like, oh, I can't believe you haven't played all of your games. It's like, well, have you read every book that you've ever purchased? Like, no.
Some people would say yes to that. And
some people would say yes.
Very deep and intrusive mental illness.
Like, there's a mental health element where I think it's okay. It's better not to beat yourself up than it is to simply enjoy the things coming in, right?
Yeah. Now, Daniel, there's a few ways to avoid buying all this stuff. First, run it past your wife.
That's
what
right.
Does she say? Right? Because I know your wife particularly is going to say, don't buy that. Look at all the other stuff you have. My wife would say the same thing to me.
Yes, but she doesn't, God bless her, doesn't necessarily, she doesn't play like the prevent defense card. So
yeah, but she could. I mean, ask her opinion, right? That's where we're at. My wife will say, "What about all the rest of the stuff in the closet?" Well, I already own that. I don't own the new stuff. I need to get the new
Right.
stuff.
That's what I do. Is if I don't want to buy something, I text my wife. I'm like, talk me out of this. And
That's
Yeah.
a great idea.
yeah.
I also try to think like we wanted to get a new kayak this year. And I could have got one cheap, and I'm like, no, we're gonna save some money. And then Star Wars Unlimited came out, and I could have bought a kayak for the amount of money I spent on the stupid card, but I didn't. And now I have 2 little boxes of cardboard instead of a new kayak.
Instead of a new kayak.
Yeah.
And then how do you value things like that, right? You're
Oh,
like,
Yeah, I don't know.
How do these little boxes equal a kayak?
Oh, man.
Kayak, yeah,
Right?
and that's what it comes out to.
And then, Steve, then you do the trick that I do. It's like, well, in one of these boosters, there's going to be the $600
Mhm.
on solo, blah blah, and that's BS. Of course, it's free.
That is BS.
Another thing too that I think is, and this is maybe a little grim, and it's sort of been hinted at by my wife, but not really. But the kind of idea is like, so when you die, what are we supposed to do with all this?
right. Yep.
So fortunately, I have Mustafa is willing to basically take every game out of the house and deal with it.
Yeah, my kids.
I think I made that deal with his wife too.
If we keep foregoing active activities, like kayaking for
Right,
for Unlimited, the death is going to come even faster.
Yeah,
It's going to
Yeah,
come even faster. That's an excellent perspective.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Josh. The kayak could flip, and then you can't get back up. You were safer playing Star Wars all along.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
do you guys sell old board games? You sell cards? Because I have stuff
Sometimes.
from like the early '90s. I'm just never going to get rid of, even though I'm like,
Yeah,
well, this card's worth
We haven't.
$100, and this worth, but I'm never selling it. Who's it? It's not actually worth anything. I'm never going
Right.
to sell
It's
it.
not actually worth anything, even if eBay says it is. Yeah.
I have a fun story about selling a collection. So
Did you? Oh wait, I'm hoping that you sold the whole thing and then went and rebought it again because you had to have it. No.
No.
Oh, okay.
I
Those
did
are
that
always
with
my.
Lord of the-
Those are my
I did that with Lord
favorite.
of the Rings.
So I'm
Those are my
not
favorite
gonna-
mystery stories.
I'm not going to say actual number amounts because it surprised me. I've been in the process of liquidating like old toys from my childhood, and then things that I've been kind of going through and keeping the things I want to collect, things we want to sell, and whatnot. And I had an old Pokemon card collection, and it was pretty much complete from the base set up until like the 5th expansion, all first edition through that, and then a massive amount of promos and Japanese stuff. And I went through and started pricing those and sold those things. And it made me question everything I've ever known about the value of games.
Yeah, it can, right?
Children, it was a perverse amount of money that we sold those things for. And so now everything I have, I kind of look at with that dollar sign of, okay, how much is this going to be worth in X amount of years? And I asked my wife, because we sold that and got a decent amount of money from them. And I said, well, I'm going to start buying more Pokemon cards to try to start a collection for the kids. When they're, 20 years down the road, they may have said, do you think I'm crazy? She goes, well, if you told me 2 weeks ago, yeah, I would have told you don't spend enough.
Yeah, right.
She goes, but now we sell them for that much. And then I bought, like you said, I bought 4 or 5 boxes of 2 or 3 sets that had came out, and it was just, they're so expensive, man.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know where they're at right now? We haven't resold them. They're sitting in the counter.
But I also don't want to approach my game collection like as a speculator.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
or
the
20 years from now, this is going to really be, because we don't know. I mean, it's
Right.
And-
It is purely speculative.
Yeah, and like the toy collection, I know how old Daniel is, and I kind of figure you guys are around the same, close to us. I mean, not
Hold
as old
on.
as Daniel, right?
I hear it alluded to.
actually, Josh is really young in the hills.
Oh,
How
is he?
old are you, Daniel?
How
I
old
hear
am
it
I?
alluded to all the time. Daniel's this old, Daniel's. I've seen that. I think I saw a picture of you that you guys post on Facebook, your little get-togethers and stuff. You don't seem. How old are you?
How old did I look to you?
I don't know. Maybe 42, 43 at most.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
Maybe if you were really pushing it, 50.
I am.
Okay, well that's not. I was
but he's-
thinking like there was a picture of
like,
you somewhere in an
obscenely
attic
young.
aging or something.
He's
like
the,
they were
he's the
talking, you
oldest
were
one
so
of
old.
us, so that's
I'm the oldest
he goes for
one,
it.
and,
So he gets
and
it.
Bill makes fun of me all the time. But
Although
isn't he
Bill is
than
older than you, yeah.
Yeah.
Bill
yeah.
is older.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know. Anyways, wait. I was trying to make a point. Anyways,
So the point is, I'm with the toys from my youth, or what, Steve?
So this is the point where the toys from our
Dry
youth,
rotted.
you can go and sell them, and like say you collected them and you have them, because the nostalgia for guys our age and the money and disposable income for the guys our age have now lined up. So you want to sell those G.I. Joe guys, those Transformers, the D&D books, all that stuff. Now's the time, because in 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at retirement. Like, I can't spend money on a G.I. Joe figure or whatever it is. And 15 years ago, people were still setting up, right? Or 20 years ago, you couldn't do it. So it's now or never.
You're absolutely right.
Now or never.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
During COVID, there was this collector's bubble. Everybody was locked inside. People were losing jobs. People weren't able to work. And everybody was inside their houses with all their old crap. And they started looking around and finding all this stuff. That's why you have these, all the grading companies started putting like hard stipulations on what they would grade, because people were literally just taking massive boxes full of cards and saying, oh, well, I'm going to sell this to try to get some more money. Let's send them into PSA. And it was just bulk stuff, like commons, regular, like stuff that was maybe worth a nickel when it was brand new. And now looks like it's been run through the dishwasher 6 times. Right. And they just send them in bulk, these big, massive things. So all these different grading companies put these stipulations on them. Like, we will only grade if it's ungraded value is over 200, over $200, we'll grade that card or something like that. But people were sending in all that stuff, and there was a big bubble that was building up, and it was crazy. And now that bubble's starting to burst and starting to come back down as people have gotten back out in the world in the past 2 or 3 years. It's come down because the market got flooded with all these collector's items.
Yes.
Initially, and it's dropping back down. So now is the time to sell, because it's only going to go down for the most part.
Yeah, I'm never going to retire on that Beanie Baby collection that somebody promised me was going to be worth what money, which I don't actually have, but yeah.
My mom does.
McDonald's toy.
So many
those McDonald's Beanie Babies.
Oh my God. There's so many.
I will say that I think the desire to spend money sometimes on, like, hey, a new set's coming out or whatever, like, do I want to get that? I find that for myself, to prevent the rush in and want to get it, the question is, I ask myself is, am I getting it because I'm really excited to sit down and play it and to go through them and all that kind of stuff? And am I going to want to spend time on it, right? Because money is one commodity, but time is the other one. And I don't have a whole lot of time as far as commodity goes. And the time that I have, I already want to spend on a number of other things like Marvel Champions. So if I'm going to have time, what am I going to want to spend my time on? Not just what am I going to want to spend my money on? And that usually will help me decide, am I going to want to play that over what I'm doing now? And if the answer is no, then I'll say, okay, let's pass on that for now. And if I get into it later, it's not going to be a big deal. If I'm excited about it and I have somebody to play with, I can get into it 10 years from now, even if it's out of print, right? That's not going to stop me from enjoying it further down the line. And then to ask myself, well, is this just is this just a rush? Is it like peer pressure because it's hyped, right? And trying to make sure I don't buy something just because of the hype, but because it resonates with me personally and with what I'm really excited about.
That's great. Another question too is, am I buying this because I'm a completionist? And the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
So for Marvel anyway, like, there's plenty of heroes and stuff that I haven't played because I'm not interested actually in them, but I have them.
Danny, you have a professional obligation to buy Age of Apocalypse.
Right. I do.
Because 2 years from now, we're going to talk about that set, and you need to have
I know. I understand. No, but I've bought everything there is for Marvel, but I haven't played it all hero-wise. Because, I'm not interested necessarily in that hero or the mechanics that drives that hero or whatever. I just haven't got to him. But it's not like I would never not get it.
Right. Well, hey,
so
speaking of hero. Do we shift?
Speaking of heroes, let's say, thanks guys for going down this rabbit hole with me. I appreciate it. Sorry, Steve, that it took a long time.
Oh, I love that. That's great. That's great.
That was a what's on your mind tonight worthy of Mustafa.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
except usually it would just be him alone.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, it takes 4 of us to be one him.
Yeah. He'd appreciate that, I think, actually. Yeah. He'd be proud. What are we here for, really, Steve?
Well, heroes. We're going to talk about those despicable heroes, or at least one of them.
What?
We're talking about a hero that has money to just throw away. and a hero who likes collecting at least tech upgrades. So, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna do a secret dossier on Tony Stark, Iron Man.
What?
All the way
Steve,
back
whose
from the
idea was this? This is awful.
This was your idea. You said, you know what? I need
Oh.
some Iron Man bash, and let's do it. So here we
Okay.
are.
As long as we all promise to like bash Iron Man, I'm in.
Well, we've got to stay on theme at least.
Okay.
I think his goatee's stupid.
Our other secret dossiers, we were kind of nice in that we were sort of like, how do we beat this guy because we're so afraid of him?
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that. We're gonna look at his card set. We're gonna talk about how he plays. How does he play in the current meta compared to when he came out? You know, like as a core hero. Each of us brought a different deck with an aspect, so we'll discuss how he plays in that aspect. And should modern villains worry about Iron Man, or is he a pushover? So,
should modern villains worry about Iron Man? Great question.
Yeah, and we always do a little bit of lore, and I know
take it away.
Wanted Daniel to do the lore, but I knew you'd get so upset and it would bother you so much that I couldn't let you.
I just kept getting sick to my stomach every time I looked at it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I have some fun lore here, I hope. So let's talk Tony Stark, Iron Man. First appearance, Tales of Suspense, number 39 in 1963.
Oh.
Yes, he's very old. And then he eventually gets a self-titled series in 1968 because, he can't be part of a team. He needs that solo spotlight. He's got to have his own book with his own title, his name across the top.
Now, Steve, is this when he looked like the picture you sent me from the show?
No, a little bit.
Okay, because that was awesome.
Do you guys remember the Iron Man television show from
I do.
Know, the 80s where he looked like this giant metal tin can? I can't even. Yeah.
He looked like Gumby in a silver suit, kind of.
Yes, like Gumby in a silver suit. Yes.
Y'all talking about the live action Iron Man?
Yes. So much fun. I can't ever unsee that.
Yeah, so I will now always picture our Iron Man to be that.
Yeah.
He looked like great value Jet Jaguar.
Yeah. That's just such a great. Anyway.
All right.
Peter, so maybe you could post a picture of that somewhere, Steve.
I dropped it in our
Nerdiverse.
Yeah.
No, but I mean for the everybody's.
I'll put it out there.
Okay.
It'll definitely be in the cover art for this issue. All right, so we know Iron Man, right? He's Tony Stark. He's a billionaire son. He's a tech genius. All this kind of stuff. He lies throughout his. In the comic books, he lies about not being Iron Man. Iron Man is an unnamed bodyguard for Tony Stark. So he's constantly lying to all his friends. I'm not Iron Man, that kind of thing, right? They call it a secret identity, but really it's just habitual lying. Anyways, so I have the top 10 greatest hits, let's call it, for some Iron Man stuff that he's done. And we're going to start, we'll just start right with some moral choices.
Now, Steve, when you say greatest hits, you mean like greatest hates, right?
Yeah. I mean, the greatest hits, why Tony Stark is really, why we hate him. Why he's not a hero. He's not a hero. Okay. So number one, he likes to drink a lot and he likes to fly around in his Iron Man suit while drunk. And
that's dangerous.
And fly into things and shoot his repulsor beams and all that sort of stuff. So I don't think you should drive a car drunk, and you shouldn't drive the Iron Man suit drunk. Well, he likes to do that.
Fair.
Yeah.
When you take the high ground as a villain.
All right. Number two. So at one point, did you know that Tony Stark dates the Wasp? I mean, he dates like 50 different women throughout his career, so it's not a surprise. But he's dating her, and he's lying to her at the same time that he's not Iron Man. He can't be a team player with her, and so just sort of a toxic relationship right there. That's just sort of a good example of him being him. So, and it does end up breaking up. Does cause problems. Let's say later on down the line. Okay, so he also his armor. The designs for his armor become the basis for many people's suits of armor. Like his tech gets stolen and gets out there, or he sells it or whatever. So lots of so-called villains have his base technology in their armor. And Tony can't have that. He can be the only one who has this. He's like proprietary master, right? He has to be the one who controls it. So he goes out at one point and he tracks down anybody who has armor based on his designs. He fights them. He disables their armor. Even other heroes like Stingray. So he effectively likes to go out and he like, this is my ball. I'm going to take it and go home. You can't have it. So he's a little selfish.
Yeah, just a little.
Okay, so number 4. Did you know that Tony Stark kills Quicksilver's nanny, Marilla?
What?
That's a low blow.
Now I read this on here, and all I could think of in my head was Consuelo from Family Guy.
Mr. Superman, no here.
Well, we're looking for a missing...
No, Mr. Superman, he no is here.
Yeah, okay. Well, can you just give him this flyer?
No, I have no money.
Just take this flyer, and if you see this baby...
No.
And her opening the door, and Iron Man standing there, and her going, "No, Mr. Quicksilver, no here," and him just blowing her away.
Blown away. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we won't talk about like Kane manipulating him at the time or anything like that. We won't bring that up. But yeah, he just kills poor Quicksilver's nanny.
What?
I don't know. I do not know the rest of the backstory behind it. That was one of those.
You know what? That's all we need to know, Steve.
Right.
It really is.
Yeah.
That's all we need to know.
Yeah. She's not a villain or anything, right? She's just a regular person.
Kang's not manipulating you into doing something that you didn't already have some predisposition for. Let's be honest.
Right.
Need to blame Kang
He clearly doesn't like nannies in general.
Wow.
He probably sees them as less than human, given that he probably was raised with half a dozen of them. You know.
I was going to say
He probably
Exactly.
dated one. Yeah.
Yes.
Lied to her.
His dad dated the rest.
Yeah.
I'm really trying hard to dislike this guy, but man.
But now that you guys went there, I'm starting to feel for Tony a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me bring it back then. Okay.
Please rescue me.
He's a member of the Illuminati. That's
What? Like
basically
the
enough.
Illuminati?
The Illuminati, yeah.
The
That's enough right there.
Illuminati?
The Illuminati, that secret organization that if we say too much about, they'll pull the plug on this show, so we won't talk about it anymore. But he's involved in the group. The Illuminati decide that at some point they have to get rid of the Hulk, his buddy Bruce Banner. So they eject Hulk into space, and that's all his idea. Like let's throw Hulk way out into space, and we're gonna send him to some random backwater planet. And he calculates it wrong. He ends up on Sakaar, which eventually causes the whole World War Hulk event, where Hulk's he's kind of mad about being ejected into space.
Wasn't he mad about everything? I mean, that's who he is, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of always angry, but he's particularly upset that he gets exiled by.
Change the record.
Yeah. Okay, Civil War. Tony takes the pro registration side, right? He's like Big Brother, like absolutely that kind of thing, and pro registration.
That to me is his biggest crime.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's absolutely disgusting.
And there's a point during the Civil War where after Cap dies, whatever time it happens, he like parades Captain America's body around like as a showpiece. Like, see, you should have registered. You should register. Registration's a good thing.
Now this is a comic thing, right?
Yeah, comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of mercy going on his side of the Civil War, right?
No. All right, number 7. Did you know he also made a brand of Sentinels? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Like the Trask
That's
ones?
new.
Yes, there's M-type Sentinels and Sentinels that we just talked about for all the X-Men stuff, because during the whole X-Men versus Avengers, he makes his own Sentinels that are just as relentless, Daniel, just as megalomaniacal. But they also wanted to date your girlfriend. So
My girlfriend?
Yeah. Yeah, he makes Sentinels.
Don't let your wife know.
In the movies, he
That
makes
is-
Ultron, but in this one, he makes Sentinels. So
Jeez.
I mean, is he Iron Man or is he bootlicker, man? Like, what are we? What are we doing here, Tony? Let's,
here's another good one. There's this thing he creates called the extremist app.
Yes.
And this thing, you get it. It makes you beautiful. It makes you feel good. It makes you look good. It makes you super healthy. Everybody wants it. It's this amazing. And he just gives it out generously to everybody. And then, once you're hooked, he removes that and forces everyone he charges everybody $100 a day to keep
What?
on the Extremis app.
Is this
Yeah.
true?
It is
It's
horrendous.
It's like the
It is.
ultimate drug dealer. Yeah.
Is
This is-
this actually a thing in the comics?
Yep.
Yes. It is so absolutely horrible. The way that he does this, and this is a bit where they actually get Tony Stark, an old Tony Stark, to come and kill the Tony Stark that builds Extremis. Like, he's that bad that everybody realizes he really is just a villain. Like, he's just awful.
Okay,
It's
so
I dislike him, and then he's
So it's-
pulling me back in.
all right, so it's not like our Tony Stark that does this,
Well, no, he is our Tony Stark.
but then
They use a version of himself that he had like embedded into a computer from like years before, because they're like, we can't beat Tony Stark. The only person who can beat Tony Stark is Tony Stark. So they clone Tony Stark and like try to use Tony Stark to beat Tony Stark.
Even Tony Stark realizes Tony Stark is terrible. and
Exactly.
Tony Stark wants to kill Tony Stark because he's like,
It's
oh man,
true.
I am really bad. I got to get rid of myself.
Even when this
Wow.
man is fighting his own demons, it's masturbatory. Like, that's a level of narcissism yet to be
Oh.
seen in the
damn it,
world.
Josh, I was taking a drink when you said that. And I almost destroyed my computer. My God. Wow. So
Yep.
that's both pro Tony and anti Tony
Anti-Tony, yeah.
in the same number, Steve.
Well, speaking of clones, there's a version of Tony Stark that clones Thor, names the clone Ragnarok, and then uses it to kill his friend Goliath, who is someone we have in the game, right?
We're supposed to be mad at that, right?
We're supposed to be mad at that. No, I guess we
They
shouldn't be
took out
mad
a
at it,
villain.
but they're supposed
took
to
out
be
a
mad
hero.
at it. Yeah, he took out a hero. Just these are points of why he's one of us, I guess. Out of
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, yeah. All right, and then the last one I have, there's a point where he gives Daredevil back his sight. I don't know exactly how that happens. Maybe it's with Extremis.
It is with the Extremis app, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But it's only temporary, and eventually, he just, nope, yoink, I'm going to take it back, and you're blind again. Haha. So, yeah, just some, good qualities in Tony Stark there. Do you guys have any other interesting tidbits about Tony Stark?
I have one.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
So, in the more recent runs, since then, Tony at one point, he has the AIs that he's developed and built and put into his various suits. One of which is Jocasta, which we have as a card in the game, right? Well, she works for him, and at a certain point, he forces her to forego her autonomy, because she has her own android body. Androids have independence and autonomy, and they're fighting for rights under the law. And it's very, motivating. And when things go awry, he says, Jocasta, I need you to man my suit. And she says, no. And he says, no, you are gonna man my suit. And he forces her to man his suit, or else he would basically hurt her and the people she loves. So he holds her, what she cares about, for ransom against her to force her into his suit. It is very, very unpalatable. It is, and it comes across very poorly in the comics. Like, it does not reflect well on Tony that he requires her to do this. Of course, it's always because, well, if we don't do this, then lives will be lost. But he has no issue degrading and mistreating other people for the sake of his own mission, right?
Yeah, his own benefit. Yeah.
When do we get the Tony Stark encounter set? Because this, I mean, he could be
Right?
his own scenario pack at this point with all this stuff.
Well, Josh, we can't wait for you to build that.
Yeah, I actually did try to build one, so I got a little tidbit for Tony Stark that I love. So, Mr.
Yeah,
Earth
let's hear
19919 Tony Stark, a la the Spider Island run, if anybody's ran that. This Tony Stark, because Queen Spider was turning everybody into spider things, had to take the Goblin formula, old Norman Osborn's Green Goblin super soldier serum gone wrong, and
Yep.
essentially turned himself into the Iron Goblin, started running around on Norman's Goblin glider with his pumpkin bombs and stuff. This is the only way to prevent himself from turning into a giant humanoid spider, was to become the Goblin, the Iron Goblin, and slowly
Of course.
began to slip into madness. It's an absolutely phenomenal run, but he's not he didn't really do anything terrible while he was crazy goblin. He started to go a little insane, but he, kamikazed himself into an army of spiders before for the greater good, which, whatever, womp womp, right? But it was still pretty cool to watch him go mad. Yeah.
So if you had the choice between us turning into a spider or a goblin, which one do you take?
Ooh. How many arms do I have as a spider?
I guess you could have you could have 8 appendages total. So.
Okay. How many arms?
You have
do I
only
have as a
arms and no
goblin?
legs.
Yeah, no legs. 8 arms, 0 legs.
All right. How many arms do I have as a goblin?
Just the 2 you start with.
Oh, I was afraid you'd say that. I gotta go spider. That's all those arms. I can do all kinds of stuff.
Okay. I'm not sure which one I'd want.
But I did try my hand at this when I found out the people over at the Homebrew Discord and the Homebrew community for Marvel Champions are just so incredibly talented, and the amount of work they put into the stuff they make is so wildly beyond anything I will ever be able to do with my limited amount of creativity I have in my body. Because I tried to make an Iron Goblin set as a hero, and I made the hero card and a little like side thing that was about madness, and I said, this takes way too damn long. I ain't doing any of this anymore, and just got rid of that. That lasted about 16 hours, I think. That was stupid. I don't know how they do all that stuff.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot. God bless anybody that takes on that.
Actually, just remind me, I started working on a superior Iron Man scenario. I'm gonna have to dig that up and see if I can.
Yeah.
And Steve, you're good at this stuff. You're good at making these cards and all that.
If I can see if I can dig it out.
Yeah, you've made a lot.
Yeah.
I gave up almost immediately.
I love making everything except the actual putting it on the card, like the art and everything. I don't know how to do any of that, and that is completely foreign to me.
It was awful.
Yeah, that can be tricky. So
I got mad at one point, just got angry. I was sitting here, I was mad. It wasn't fun. At no point did I have any kind of enjoyment at it. I got mad. I was mean to my wife. Like, I yelled at my kids.
Wow.
It was just a bad sign.
All right. Tony Stark can do that to you, man.
And it's all Tony Stark's fault.
It's Tony Stark's fault. It absolutely is. So, Steve, you tell us a story. It's a secret dossier. We have to care about Iron Man?
yeah, we're gonna learn. I mean,
Tell me more about what we're doing.
Defeat your foe. You must know your foe. You must stare into the abyss, Daniel. So we're gonna make you read the Tony Stark and the Iron Man card for anyone who hasn't played him. Because, I mean, it is a core set hero. So
it's core
when's
set.
the last time you used them? Maybe people haven't played him in a long time because there's like 50 heroes to choose from, right?
And I think that's where this came from, Steve, because the other week we were talking about how the game grows and the core set heroes every year are more abandoned, right? So I had said, I bet even Iron Man is more interesting, something like that, right? Now that the card pool has grown.
Yeah.
Or maybe I said something like that. But yeah, I'm happy to read Tony Stark and Iron Man. And when do we share our thoughts about this hero?
Let's
read all the cards first?
Let's run through some of the cards. And
cards,
then,
okay.
And then we can talk about our thoughts on the hero in general and different meta, and then we'll talk in our various topics.
So, Tony Stark, the alter ego, has got 3 rec. He's a genius traded fella. His keyword is futurist. He's got the action, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, and discard the others, limit once per round. Then when he flips to his hero, he is 2 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense, Avenger traded. You get +1 hand size for each tech upgrade you control to a maximum hand size of 7. Now, his hero side starts with a hand size of 1. So there you go.
Yep. Right off the bat, it's a little creative, right? Something
it's
different.
Very different. Although it wasn't very different because it was the core set. We didn't know it was unlike the other core set heroes in that regard.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah. He was the guy that stayed in alter ego for a while all the rest of you were working.
Yeah.
That pestilence, I think it's pestilence, one of the famine, whichever one it is from the War Riders one we were talking about earlier that blanks the text box.
Ooh.
Hitting
That's
him,
tough.
knocking you down to 1 hand size.
Oh my goodness. That is amazing.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, you know what they say about guys with little hands.
Oh.
Little gloves.
That's right.
Happy life.
So let's talk a little bit about his kit, Steve.
All right. Yeah.
What makes Iron Man to me is he's got card draw.
Yeah, he has some interesting card draw. So he has this futurist ability right there, and then he has
and
this
then the Stark Tower.
Yep.
It's not card draw as much as it is expanding hand size, I guess, because he's pulling things out of his discard. So he doesn't have a way to make money, which is interesting for me in his kit.
Well,
He kind of does. He kind of does.
Well, he has pepper pots, but he just gets more cards, right? He gets more stuff, more than he has like cards that exhaust to give you a X resource or something, right?
Yeah. So Stark Tower, 2-cost support. That's alter ego. That's the key, right? Exhaust the tower. You choose a player, so he could share. He's never going to.
Have you ever seen that happen? Yeah,
once or twice. That player returns a topmost tech upgrade in their discard pile to their hand. So you have to put something in your discard pile to get it back. Okay. But then you do have Pepper Potts. She's a 3-cost support persona. You exhaust Pepper Potts and you generate the resources of the top card in your discard pile. So it could be a double, right? Could be a double.
Could be a shawarma.
Could be a shawarma if you're playing in that campaign.
That was pool aspect.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yep. Yes.
First off, the last time you played Iron Man might have been 100 years ago, but like I played him a couple of times. I never play Pepper Potts.
Oh, really?
Oh, I get her out.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Because if it's a genius, yeah.
She is that.
It's like $3, and it's never a good time to spend $3.
But you could immediately get 2 of it back if you spent like strength with her.
If you spend it right. Yeah.
Yeah, she immediately generates 2.
No, I understand. I understand her value. It's just every time she's in my hand, there's more important stuff to do.
But she turns into like a net 2 cost for a constant.
Get it? No, I totally get it. She could be worth $100 by the end of the game.
Yeah, you just have to waste the time of the rest of the players.
But you have to waste your turn to play her, basically.
But it's not any different than playing a helicarrier.
Right.
Because you use it on the turn that you play it, right? So at worst, it's a helicarrier, which most people will play right?
But Scott, other people play helicarriers for me to use.
I see. That's very Iron Man of you.
Yeah,
she's a queen carrier. Let's say it.
Yeah.
So, no, I get all that, but it's just like I can't. And usually I only ever draw in like mid game where it's like, well, I'm kind of set up anyway. I don't know. Like that's it. That's the thing about what we'll talk about with Iron Man is
her hands look wonky in the art. And, yeah, I get you, Daniel. I don't like it either.
Well, the hands, the fingers are weird. And her left hand doesn't make any sense. Actually,
no, it does not. It looks like her right hand, but it's her left hand. She has 2 right hands.
Her left hand looks like a hoof. Like it's got a weird art to it.
Yeah. Anyway, Steve, you were saying.
Anyways, why doesn't Josh tell us about a couple of his events in the deck? How about that?
So let's talk about Repulsor Blast. It's a 1-cost event. It's an attack. It's a superpower, and it's a hero action. Attack traded. You can deal 1 damage to an enemy and discard the top 5 cards of your deck. And for each printed lightning resource discarded this way, you deal 2 additional damage to that enemy. I like Repulsor Blast in Iron Man decks.
Well,
man.
Of course you do. That could be 11 damage.
Yeah, it's sweet when it hits.
But the real problem is that it dictates your deck build sometimes.
It does.
Oh, yeah.
Which
and
I don't
there's
care
some
for.
early heroes that are like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to play into the Repulsor Blast, right?
So no.
He's got 3 of those in his deck, though. Like that's a significant amount.
Yeah.
Now there are enough energy resources usually in your deck that even if you're discarding, you're probably going to hit 2, right? On average, out of those 5 cards might be. And so then you're paying 1 for 5 damage. That's still really solid. If you only hit 1 energy, this is actually worth it.
It's worth it. You're right, Scott.
And
$1 for 3 damage is great.
It was really fun to throw in against Iron Man when you're playing him. Is Zax. The Zax.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Zax just likes to take all those big energy resources and just.
That's why we loved Zax when we talked about him many moons ago. Yeah.
Can we talk about this next one?
Please.
All right. Following up, we got Supersonic Punch. 2-cost event. Attack traded. Hero action. Attack. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. 8 damage instead if you have the aerial trait.
How on earth do you become Ariel with Iron Man?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah. Okay, so he has his events. So he's got attack events. He doesn't have thwart events. That's interesting to note, right? And Daniel, you said you're going to stay in alter ego longer, and then he doesn't have any thwarting. Which is pretty fun. So,
well, it's his one big stat, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
All right, Scott, give us a couple of these tech upgrades that he comes with.
All right, let's start with the Arc Reactor. It's a 2-cost upgrade, item and tech traded with the hero action Exhaust Arc Reactor and Ready Iron Man.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I think
pretty good.
it's apropos that he says about this that when he put on this armor, he took on more power than any human was ever intended to have, and maybe more responsibility than my heart can truly bear. I don't know that Tony Stark has a heart, but he certainly has an ego.
His weaponized narcissism.
I love it.
Yeah.
But that is definitely the staple card in his kit. Being able to ready and use that to thwart twice in a turn is really big. The sooner we get that down, the sooner Iron Man really starts to work, I think.
Agreed.
Yep.
But interestingly, you don't need that first, right? Like
No.
you want 3 or 4 things down before that you might be talking about soon, Scott.
That's right. So that kind of brings us to maybe the next one, which is the 1-cost upgrade, the Mark V helmet. So this is it's got a great shot of his helmet. It's armor, tech traded with a hero action, thwart action, exhaust, Mark V helmet, remove 1 threat from a scheme from each scheme instead if you have the aerial trait. So that's going to boost his ability to remove threat as well. And it's a 1-cost upgrade. So it's paying 1 for basically a bonus hand size at the end of its turn.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 threat a turn he can clear. Eventually more than that if there's more side schemes. But yep, cheap upgrade. He's got to get it out.
That's great with the personal side schemes that come into play now.
Yeah.
You can get those out
It
on the
is. It is a little weak overall, right? Like, I mean, it's 1 cost. You're removing a threat, like it boosts your hand size, so you're gonna play it. But 1 threat is not a lot of threat. Like, it's fine if you're in solo and and the threat goes up by like 1 per round on the main scheme, maybe. But realistically, this is not boosting. It's not getting rid of a lot, right?
Right.
But yet it says 1 from each scheme. Scott, you still haven't told me how he gets air.
That's right.
Like, I feel like you're bearing the lead here.
Yeah, we are. That might be the last thing we read.
Daniel, you should tell us about his armor.
His armor is pretty legit. So he's got Mark V armor. It is a 3-cost upgrade. Armor tech traded. You get +6 hit points. There it is.
Yep.
He starts with 9. That's really good. You spent $3 for it, but dude, it's worth it. It's a card he gets and 6 hit points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it though? Like in the grand scheme of things, I mean, symbiote suit gives you +10, +1 to everything.
But could you imagine back in the day, Josh, not playing this?
Oh no!
The minute you draw it, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Like, this is actually usually the one that I get on the table last.
That's
Fascinating.
fascinating.
Unless I have something that like fetches it, which we'll probably talk about the new side schemes and stuff with respect to him. But this was the one that I usually did not. If I have a hand and I've got this and 2 other techs, like this is not the one that I'm putting on the table. Because the hell.
Oh, that's interesting. Can we talk a little strategery with him yet, Steve, or not yet? Or should we? Let's table Mark V for a second. Scott, I want to address that when we're done with his cards, with his kit.
Yep.
So, Scott, can you tell me how he gets aerial?
No. Because I'm going to tell you about the gauntlets. Well, we're going to leave you hanging. People have no idea that never seen that card coming.
I feel really bad for people who started this game last week.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So he has 2 powered gauntlets. They're 2-cost armor, tech, upgrade, hero action, attack, exhaust powered gauntlets. Deal 1 damage to an enemy. 2 damage instead if you have the aerial trait. And he has 2 he thinks he's funny. He says, "Here, let me give you a hand." And there are 2 of them. And I've always seen, and people are new to this game and they're getting it all the time. And I have seen questions like, "Can I have both of these out at the same time?" Yes, you can. They're not restricted. There's nothing like that. He's got 2 hands.
Yep.
There you go.
In fact, have 2 hands.
Yep. So you can have
Why
both
don't you
now.
guys do the villainous thing? Just tell them no. That tells you can's a liar.
Uh,
Well, we want people to play the game. We lure them in with the
Yeah.
self.
Y'all
Yeah,
getting
that's
soft.
Well, we
Feeling
can't
soft on me,
defeat them
boys.
if they don't actually play. So
Fair enough.
yeah. All right. There's one card left. I guess Scott has to tell us about it.
Mhm.
he has to.
That was the rule, I guess.
There's two because we skipped the ally, but
Skip the ally.
Well, we'll skip the ally for now.
we'll get back to him.
Yeah, we'll get back to him for sure.
Nobody plays it anyway. So the last upgrade
I like
is his rocket boots. And I know what you may be thinking. Who puts rockets on boots? But like most of our heroes do. And Iron Man, in fact, was perhaps the innovator for this. It's a one cost trade. It's armor and tech traded. So all of this stuff is armor as well as has a utility factor. It gives him +1 hit point. There are 2 of them. So when you get them both in play, that's an additional 2 more hit points on top of the 6 you already got. And it has the hero
Nice.
action, exhaust rocket boots, and spend a mental resource, gain the aerial trait until the end of the phase.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And this is clearly recognizing the fact that Tony's mental prowess is like a noxious gas that is so potent it can be used like rocket fuel.
Well, there they are, Steve. What do you think?
Yeah. I've never quite been able to theme murder why the boots give him more hit points, but
Because he's so fast, you can't hit him.
I think that
okay.
is it. I think that's
There you
Okay.
go. I think that's
Okay.
it.
Okay. It's harder to get.
So,
Gotcha.
so Scott,
These boots are made for blocking.
The boots were made for blocking. That's right.
Blocking, yeah.
They're made for running away, really.
Yeah, right. Now, Steve, I know I said, what do you think? But now I want to interrupt that thought to talk to Scott about what I was surprised when, Scott, you said that Mark V armor is the last thing you put on. It's the first thing I put on because I have to flip. So if you have that, you can flip to hero sooner with Iron Man and endure. And this is maybe a solo thing, and endure the because otherwise it's the shock of the villains scheming against you, right? And you can't necessarily deal with that in solo. Like I played Ebony Maw today with the deck that I built for tonight, and it just crushed me staying. I tried to stay two turns in Alter Ego, and it was over. So I put on that armor just so I could weather a few low card hero turns.
Okay, but Daniel,
to get
if
it
you
back-
have
to get it-
if you have the Mark V helmet and 2 booster boots and the Mark V armor in your hand, whatever. I'm going for quantity.
No, I get it.
Hand size is up, right?
If that is in my hand, yes. But if in my opening hand after mulliganing and all that, I have Mark V armor and like rocket boots, for example, I might, or the 2-cost one where I can't afford them both. I'll put on the armor just so I don't sit in Alter Ego. And I will make that flip first turn to hero, suffer the hand size so I can weather the block, and then go back to Alter Ego the next time and just sort of do it that way. Like Iron Man is a slow build, but you can't in solo just stay in Alter Ego.
No.
So that's why I put on the armor first. So I'm
Here's
curious.
the question I
Yeah.
would pose to you guys, and I think it goes yours is superpower training player side schemes in play. It gets triggered. Which of these do you pull out first with? Daniel, it
Interesting.
seems like you pull out Mark V armor, right? Because it can pull out any of these.
Yeah, 3 or less. I would put the $sign on that one. I always do on that if I can.
I would pull if I didn't have anything else in play, right? Assuming
nothing
like, hey,
else
this
in
is
play.
out. You're playing with Cable. What's the first one you're going to put in play? I would put his arc reactor.
Yeah, I think I'm with Scott on this one.
If it was later in the game and I didn't have it out yet, then yeah, I would pick the Mark V armor because like it's just free money.
Value, yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
Because you can take the hit and then just ready, flip down and recover if you have the free ready, right? You just need to.
No, I get arc reactors is best thing for sure, but especially in like let me ask you this, Scott. In multiplayer, in a 4-player game, is this still your first pick?
Arc reactor? Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And I would, generally speaking, even in solo, I would probably mulligan the Mark V armor because to me it's too expensive. So
well, you can mulligan that. You mulligan that to then pull
You might
it
find
back
nothing.
with his futurist.
Well, right. You can pull a. You can.
Yeah, you can always pull it back. That's the other thing. Like discards
Right, you
of
pull it
Stark
back with
don't
Stark
mean
Tower.
anything.
That's right. So I would rather set up his other resources and equipment.
So you go the cheap
then
things
focus on that.
first.
That's
kind
right.
of, and then okay.
So Josh, if you're playing Tony Stark and you're an alter ego, you got to get that hand size up. What's the hand size the minimum hand size that you'll say, okay, I'm good enough now. I'll flip over to Iron Man.
4.
4 total hand size.
If I can get his hand size up to 4,
Okay.
that's when I feel comfortable. But I will stay one extra turn in alter ego at maximum. Maybe I did play a game where I stayed 3 turns in alter ego. I can't remember who I played against. It's been a year and a half. But it was only because I had a very good opening hand where I got some allies down and they were able to help me control that threat.
Gotcha.
While I stayed down to fish. But 4 is as much as I feel safe. Because you got to flip over and start throwing hands.
Yeah. 4's about right for me too, I think. So that's where the many techs. Yeah.
Yeah. I will do it with 3.
I played solos today and was like, I actually had to flip a couple times with a 2 hand size early on just to mitigate threat.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, I mean, you got a deck build to that tech.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
And also, I
yeah.
didn't draw allies. Like so I built the leadership deck.
Yeah, I was gonna say, were you in leadership?
I was and didn't draw the the allies.
No allies. Yeah.
So when you don't do that, you gotta adapt a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I was in Hero a little sooner than I would have thought, but also solo with Iron Maw or Ebony Maw rather, who I played. That's a 6 threat flip, and he's got 2 thwart or 2 scheme rather. So
really?
that could be turn 1 where it goes.
Can't let old Ebony Memo go unchecked too long.
Yeah, so I had to get to Hero, and so that's why I prioritized the armor because I knew I was going there right away because Iron Man's thwart is his highest thing, and
it's good it's a good stalling tactic. Yeah,
I mean it's basically what I had to do until the allies showed up. So yeah.
Well, why don't we talk about some decks here?
Okay.
That we can be a little more specific here. We each came with a different aspect. I have protection. Daniel has leadership. Josh has aggression, and Scott has justice. And Mike made us a pool aspect deck that we'll talk about.
Okay.
Who wants to go first? We'll talk a little bit about the deck, the new cards, and how it functions.
We got one card missing, and Daniel said it was in his deck. We'll let Daniel go.
Oh, thank you. All right. So I was leadership, and I was thinking like, all right, so we know who this guy is, right? We know Iron Man is a little selfish, a little conceited, a little like let people do the work for him. So I thought, how can I cheat him? And also think about new cards. So the new leadership cards, I thought I had to put in from Apocalypse. That's, the sidekick and the things that go for sidekick, right? Which it has to be War Machine. So thematically, that's perfect, right?
Sure.
But all that means is that Iron Man just keeps War Machine around longer to do his work for him, right? The other thing that I thought was cheaty Iron Man is leadership allows you to not only throw a lot of allies on the table, but a lot of upgrades onto them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those upgrades are tech upgrades. So when you put a tech upgrade on Ronin or Squirrel Girl or whoever, that buffs your hand size too if you're a little bit slow on your own Stark tech. And so basically I tried to double the way to get tech into the game for his hand size. So to go to Hero faster was my goal with the leadership deck. So in that regard, I played Power Gloves, reinforced suits, things like that. Just these tech upgrades you put on allies. And I stayed entirely Avenger.
Okay.
So some of the events like All for One and Suit Up, which I think is obviously perfect in an Iron Man deck, which is from Age of Apocalypse. So that's a new card. People might
That's
not know
a really cool new card.
Alter Ego action. Search your deck and discard pile for an ally and an upgrade that can be attached to them and add them to your hand. So right there, you kind of can fast track your allies with tech, because also Iron Man wants other people to stand in the way of danger for him.
No.
So yeah, he's
With all
terrible.
those hit points?
He's terrible. Yeah, with all every good Iron Man player ends the game at 16 or more health. So, as we know, and so like things like All for One and Inspiring Presence, things like that. They're in this deck as well. I got 7 allies: Black Panther and Captain America, Ronin, Squirrel Girl, U.S. Agent, and White Tiger. The best thing about, I want to say best thing, a thing about Iron Man, Tony Stark, is his card draw. So it seems elusive that he doesn't have a big hand size, but Stark Tower and his own futurist thing bring cards to him and like filter. So he's just super strong. And like I said, I played against Ebony Maw a couple times today just to see how this deck worked. And lost the first game really quickly because I thought it's Iron Man, I need to stay in Alter Ego. And I just got overwhelmed with things and then Shadow of the Past. But then I was a little bit more adaptive in my second game and flipped early to Hero, even with a 2-hand size. And it was fine because his hero events are kind of cheap.
They are.
And so you can stay Alter Ego, get your hand size or whatever, flip later, but yet still have I don't know. There's just something about him that is great. And I will tell you this:
Wait, did you just say there's something about him that is great?
There's something about him that is great, and it is this: I did not win against Ebony Maw for any of the leadership shenanigans or tech upgrades in the leadership bit. I won because of all the Tony Stark cards.
Yeah. Okay.
So are you saying you think that Tony Stark is justified in how much he values himself and his own value?
Are you saying Quicksilver's nanny deserved it?
Okay.
Well, I'm not saying that, Josh. No, but I will say, like,
I don't know.
Now, what's interesting about him is he has the lowest stats of any hero in the game, right? 2/1/1.
Not quite.
1/1/1 is Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel.
Oh, right. Well, okay.
Quicksilver. He's only a 1/1/1. It would have been higher if he had been with his nanny longer.
Yeah, I know. He had time to raise that boy.
Right.
So yeah, but he's got low stats, but he also doesn't have anything in his kit that gives him
boost it.
A buff to any of those stats,
No.
right? So he's got his stuff that it can ping damage or ping thwart. So that might be where he's vulnerable if any kind of villain can deal with base stats or something. I don't know if that'll ever come up, but it was his own kit that won me the day against Ebony Maw. It was nice to have a leadership ally show up to do stuff, and Ronin was great. So Ronin in this particular build was awesome. I kept him alive the entire time with like Inspiring Presence and that. So he was fantastic, but he might have been all I needed. so if I were to rebuild this deck, I'd put him in it, and all the sidekick stuff for War Machine, and that's it.
Okay.
But he is fine on his own is my sad point. You can put him in any flippin' aspect.
You really can.
Well, and we did that.
We put him in every aspect. I will say I like what you did here, Daniel, because War Machine is probably one of the least played signature allies, but his stats are solid, right? He has 4 health and his attack is 2 with only 1 consequential damage. So he can attack quite a bit, and you can really make use of the like flipping down and healing because he has enough health to like get that heal out of flipping down and keep using it. So I like the idea that you were buffing up War Machine, with your different upgrades and the sidekick and cards like Side by Side. You can use them several times without him getting defeated because he does have a nice big health pool. Yeah. So that was a clever use of those new leadership cards. He is not who I would have picked for that, but I like the deck you built. That's pretty cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, part of it was too is like, well, I wanted to use the new cards as we're building Iron Man for the future, So, and that's his one shot for sidekick.
It's too bad War Machine doesn't have Avenger on him, because then you could attach those power gloves that you put in the deck to him. But he can't, right? So he can just get more health.
Right.
You can always throw honorary Avenger in Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean,
you do that.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike, Lexicon.
That's right.
So yeah, thank you guys.
I'll make note that
That's-
Daniel
that's
didn't
my
include
leadership
that.
deck. Say it again.
I'm just saying that you didn't include the Honorary Avenger in the deck.
No, I did not.
Josh made a comment about great minds. I was just
Yeah, my mind is not great. I did not do that.
It's the two guests, Daniel. Just them.
not true.
Your mind is very great, Daniel, and you have excellent taste in literature.
I think we have some other decks, right?
Yeah, we have some more. Who wants to go next? We've got a justice or an aggression.
I'll go.
All right.
My
That's
deck's
very
suck.
aggressive of you.
I'll go. Put me in now. Hold on. Let me tell you about this Iron Man deck. All right. It's mean, it's lean, and by lean, it's 45 cards. Someone's going to call me an idiot. I know.
Well, Daniel's was 45 cards too.
Was yours
so-
45
is
cards
mine.
too?
So is
What?
mine.
Guys, I don't think we know what we're doing.
Mine
we
is
should have
not.
been doing this.
Mine is not.
Somebody somewhere. I think Villain Theory is grasping.
I
his chest.
have never
Right.
believed in the 40 card deck.
Neither have I. My decks are very rarely 40 cards.
41 is my normal, but 45 or 48 is not unheard of for me. So go ahead, brother.
So pulled into a 45 card deck, and it's nothing super special. I wanted to add some new cards, and the more I started looking at it, I got some kind of new cards. So we're from the next evolution wave a little bit. And when I look at we're not even through yet. Because it's a dive bomb deck. Like you can't have an aerial hero, a hero that has access to aerial, and build an aggression deck and not immediately go to dive bomb hone technique.
Yeah.
Right. That's the wombo combo. The problem with Iron Man is to get that combo off, he has to spend double the mental resources a turn because you have to spend a mental resource to activate his boots and then pay for whatever aggression attack event he's hone techniquing at that time. So I've actually filled this deck with nerd icons.
Yeah.
Which are the icons I love being a nerd in the heels.
Yeah, very few energy, so you're not really going to be hitting your.
I think we got one. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 energies total in the deck, and then we have over the almost 25 or so.
You have 22 mentals.
22 mentals in the deck total. So the whole point of this is to try to get your boots down. We've included Ingenuity. So Ingenuity is a card that came in Ironheart that only geniuses can play, and Tony Stark is a genius. So it's a card just built for him, just to fuel that narcissism. Get that on the table. Got to play it in alter ego though, but he wants to sit in alter ego for a little bit, so he's more likely to go for that. I try to mulligan fairly hard for Ingenuity because that's going to give me that's going to be a resource generator for one of my mentals. That's going to fuel my engine right off the bat. I go kind of ally heavy in it, so I run Ironheart, Moon Girl, Nick Fury. Those are 3 allies that are going to give me some card return. I get some return on investment. Moon Girl's giving me big return on investment because if I play her correctly, and I have 22 mentals in my deck, so it should be just basically, effective singular cost. Nick Fury's giving me good return. Ironheart's drawing me a card. I threw Vivian in there just because she has a mental printed on her, and she's going to let me blank out perhaps a guard minions come out, which can really hamper dive bomb. Because that's
a good point.
Yeah, that damage is dealt simultaneously by dive bomb. So if you have a guard minion out, you can't hit the villain with your dive bomb. You hit everything else on the table, you don't hit the villain. So Vivian being there gives me an ability to blank something.
That's good.
Yeah. Then we got Wasp. Wasp also printed mental resource. She's an extra money sink. I can get her down for 1. She's going to take a hit for me. She's got 3 attack. So she can take out, if I have a guard minion, kind of pesky guard minion in the way, and I'm getting ready for a wombo combo with my dive bomb. We got 3 dive bombs in there. That can probably get cut down by 1 if you want to try to inch it towards 40 cards. But I like to throw 3 in because dive bomb's fun to put on the table.
Great, it's great.
We threw in Moment of Triumph because Moment of Triumph, after you attack and defeat an enemy, you're going to heal 1 damage for your hero for each point of excess damage dealt to that enemy by that attack. So we dive bomb with a Moment of Triumph in our hand, and we do a ton of excess damage to the table, and then we just heal all that damage we took back up. It's just a full help. And I got a couple follow-throughs in the deck to try to help with that excess damage, and also have no quarter in the deck to take advantage of the follow-throughs and further excess damage and the amount of red cards we have in the deck. So if you can hit, hit with a hone technique, warrior skill, no quarter, pop with a follow through on like a lower health minion, you're doing like 7 excess damage on top of that. And then you're pulling in potentially 5 or 6 extra cards into your hand to fuel those high cost dive bombs, you know. And then pitch back. If you're going to play aerial with a dive bomb, you got to have a pitch back, right? It's just 4 extra damage to anything after you do any kind of attack. For resources, only running Genius and then 2 times power of aggressions. Tony Stark has a lot of card draw, like we talked about. So I found I was able to pay for things pretty easily as long as I was kind of spendthrift about what I was paying for. I do run a Queen Carrier, and I threw Hall of Heroes in there. After you defeat a minion, put a glory counter there, alter ego action, exhaust it, remove 3 glory counters, draw 3 cards. Because Dive Bomb should clear minions out like crazy, and you should be filling up Hall of Heroes really, really easily. And that's going to give you, even more draw off of that. And again, the follow-throughs, hone technique, ingenuity, warrior skill. Warrior skills, though, when your heroes attacks, remove 1 counter from here, the attack does 1 additional damage. I got that in there, 1, to add an extra damage to no quarter, and 2, because it's going to give you a couple extra damage to Dive Bomb. It's not like the most key piece of the kit, but I just like it. I like having it in there. It's another red card for no quarter to catch.
Yeah, it's a nice tech.
And it's a mental resource. Speaking of tech and aggression, let's talk about tech and aggression. Do you know how many tech cards there are in aggression to benefit Iron Man?
I'm guessing you put the only one that was in there.
I
put both of them. 2. You can have 2 aggression cards that have tech on them, and they're both hand cannon.
Yeah.
That's what you can have. Hand cannon is the only aggression tech, and we are 5 years into this stupid game.
Well, how sad that you forgot the plasma gun or whatever from basic.
A plasma pistol. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, you can do the plasma pistol. You can do the boots. The boots are guardian only. You have somebody else at the table throw an honorary guardian on you. You can throw the boots in.
You true.
You have the side scheme lock and load, which fetches one of those hand cannons, right? That's it.
Yeah, because we want the hand cannons in because we're getting the readies from the armor, so we want to boost that singular that basic attack as much as we can. Lock and load kind of gives us a backup. If we don't draw into a hand cannon early, we can lock and load into a hand cannon, and cannon makes your basic attack do overkill damage, so follow through can buff that as well. And so you're still doing, and Moment of Triumph can benefit if you need a Moment of Triumph synergizes with that because you're doing excess damage with your hand cannon attacks. So you can double up on the hand cannons and have he can swing for 5 if you have both hand cannons out. Potentially more, up to 7 if you have both follow throughs, and hit a minion with 1 health and all of it goes excess damage. Heal for 6 with Moment of Triumph off of that.
Love it. Now, Josh, as an Iron Man player, don't you feel like 45 cards in Tony Stark is kind of like 40 cards in normal people because of the way he goes through his deck so fast, right? So you see 45 cards, and I know the purists are like, oh, you got to get it to 40. But today playing solo, I went through my deck twice.
And especially when you're doing the no quarter strategy, it's better
the upgrades are out there.
It's better to lean into a higher card count because you want that ratio of red cards in your deck. And with Iron Man, you're getting a lot of his cards out on the table, right? And a lot of your basics are going to be out on the table too. So you're thinning the deck quite a bit, and you're mostly just going to be tossing repulsor blasts, which you didn't want anyway, and maybe your supersonic punches. At least in this deck, right? You're not getting a lot of damage out of it. So you're not really losing anything. You're not losing anything that you want, and you're getting all the aggression cards you want. So with this particular deck, I think that's a really nice. I would push these usually to 50 cards, but for this one, I think 45 is a great number. This looks very nicely.
I had, if you're playing a low minion game, this deck, meh. It does okay. I'd cut Hall of Heroes and probably cut Warrior Skill. If you're looking to really like cut down on your cards, you could probably cut one of your dive bombs if you really wanted to. I personally wouldn't because it's funner to have 3, but that's what it.
You're not playing 3 on a single pass probably.
Yeah. But against I played this against Crossbones, just standard Crossbones with all the Hydra modulars in it, and was throwing down Angela to pull Hydra out. had a few extra minions coming out on crossbones as encounter turns. It was just fantastic. I had a blast with it. I built it again with multiplayer in mind. That's what I play most of my games as nowadays. Used to play a ton of solo, and time doesn't allow for that anymore. But if you have somebody that can kind of that can kind of handle that threat for you, and he can stay down and throw some allies out to assist, then it really can get off the ground and go. There's other heroes that do aerial a lot better, in my opinion, but he has access to aerial, and the aerial archetype, like the aerial tribal build, is one of the strongest for aggression.
His aerial on demand is actually kind of exceptional, right? And especially the way you built your deck here, with like half of it seems to be nerd resources.
Oh,
so
yeah. Well, you got to use 2 to make his combo go off. You have to have double the resources to anyone else has.
Yeah. So this is a great deck.
Well, thank you. I feel like
I really like this.
Better, thank you.
All right, we got 2 more decks to go. So
3 more decks.
Okay.
2 real decks.
Scott, you want to go, or do you want me to go?
I can go next.
All right, take it away.
I've got Justice. This is the intellectually superior Iron Man. And this deck
you don't
is
say so yourself.
Right. Yes. This deck is all about using Iron Man's smarts against the enemy. So he's going to keep the enemy confused, and then he's just going to beat him up while he's confused for maximum damage. So this is a float like a butterfly deck. So that's going to be the key card that this is built around. And it's built around keeping the enemy confused, which is particularly good given that you want to flip down regularly. So we have several different sources of confuse in the deck. It is a 45 card deck. Now, I built this for solo because I play a lot of solo. So there are certain tech cards in there that are really in there to help me play it in solo that you maybe wouldn't need to run if you were a player. So you could maybe pull those out and pull that deck overall counting down just a little bit. It's only running 5 allies. It's got Banshee. He can... When he uses a basic power, he can confuse a minion. So if you have a big minion that you're wanting to hit damage against with that float like a butterfly, Banshee can help with that. It has Cypher, who draws you a card when you hit a confused minion. It has Dazzler, who can confuse, Professor X, who can also confuse. These are all 4 of those are within the X-Men waves, fairly recent additions to how we can play Iron Man. So this deck, unlike Josh's deck, this deck is built almost exclusively around energy resources. So when you are getting those repulsor blasts, you're going to want to use them, right? And you're going to get a lot of damage out of them. Most of the cards that are going to sit in the deck have an energy resource. You've got, for Justices, those have an energy. Turn the Tide, that's energy, so that's when you remove all the threat from a scheme, you can deal damage. So especially in solo, that's a strong one. It's not always as strong when you're talking about multiplayer. We don't remove all the threat quite as often. You've got 2 yawn rolls, which is the Justice version of pitchback. If you're aerial and you thwart, you can then play a yawn roll and thwart 3 more threats. So very cheap threat removal there. We mentioned before that Iron Man really actually doesn't have great threat removal, but he does have that to thwart. We have a Heroic Intuition to drive that up to 3, plus your Arc Reactor. That's a pretty decent 6 on a turn just with your hero, and then you can throw those yawn rolls and for Justices in there to help remove the rest. I'm running 3 player side schemes in this deck. I'm running Lay the Trap. It's an energy again, and it's damage. Build support because we want to get our supports out, and superpower training. I like the side schemes with Iron Man because realistically, early on, one of his biggest advantages is his ability to thwart for 2. And sometimes, especially in solo, there's not that much threat on the main scheme. So if I'm playing Justice, having something else I can thwart makes better use of my cards early on. I think in a multiplayer game, they maybe aren't quite as valuable, but they help the whole team. I know that's not really what Iron Man's all about, but maybe your friends will like you more and you can use them to further your advantages further on in the game and in your life. So it's worth it, right? So I like those in him. He has several targets for them. So you're more than likely still going to have something in your deck by the time you finish them. A lot of heroes don't. They only have 1 support or 1 upgrade, and it might not even be very expensive. Iron Man has numerous upgrades and has 2 supports built in, right? He has Pepper Potts and he has Stark Tower, both of which you want to get down I've added in a Quinn Carrier as well that you really want to get down because it gives you access to a wild, which can turn on your aerial. So getting those out early is really advantageous. And obviously the superpower training to get out your upgrades means a tech that you're going to add to your hand size, and that's going to build out your suit. So both new additions since we had that X-Men wave really added to the speed with which Iron Man gets set up.
Absolutely.
A couple other things in there. I've added the sonic rifles. Those aren't super new. Those are from the Guardians wave, but they're huge for him because they are tech and they confuse the enemy. So in this particular deck, this is huge because we want to keep the enemy confused. And on top of that, they're going to add to your ability to draw cards, right? They're going to expand your hand size. So we love that in Iron Man. Once you're set, I've also got a plasma pistol in there. It is restricted, so we can only have either 2 sonic rifles or a plasma pistol and a sonic rifle. We want to be using those because with that float like a butterfly out, that little bit of damage suddenly goes up a lot. So his gauntlets are going to do 2 damage or 3 damage, right? Whether you're aerial or not, because you're getting 1 extra. They are attacks, right? They're not like Iron Hearts, which isn't an attack, right? You just exhaust it and deal damage. For his, it actually is an attack, which means it triggers retaliate, but also means he gets the bonus from float like a butterfly. The plasma pistol does as well, and so does the sonic rifle. So you have a lot of little bits of ping damage already built into his kit, and the deck's going to take advantage of that with float like a butterfly to boost that damage. I played this against Kang last night. I was following suit from Steve and Bill in their game. And I took this deck up against Kang, and I demolished him so fast because the damage output was just enormous, right? When I was getting my repulsor blasts, I think I pulled 1, and it did 11 damage, or maybe because I pulled the energy resource in there, and it was literally all energy. And the float like a butterfly was just doing tons and tons of damage every turn. So really easy. This deck would not do well against a stalwart or steady enemy, right?
I was going to ask you, it seems like it could do a steady enemy, no?
You could do steady. Stalwart would struggle.
Stalwart, it neuters it, of course, but...
Yeah, completely. You would want to ditch this deck for something else.
Float like a butterfly.
Well, you can also, stun or confuse rather all the minions, can't you?
You could use it to fight minions. That's true. But, that would not be very efficient.
No,
I like bringing float like a butterfly in multiplayer games and playing it on our aggression here. Whoever's swinging a lot at the table, or our like a protection that's run something or whatever. Somebody that's going to be swinging quite a bit.
I agree, and that's probably something I would do if I was playing this multiplayer. I would probably drop counterintelligence and under surveillance are both in there to raise. Counterintelligence is going to keep the threat from popping when I turn to alter ego, or if I stay in alter ego. It's like having a thwart in alter ego.
Right.
Yep.
So,
did you give any thought about running Agent Coulson to recur counterintelligence?
I did, and in the past I probably would have run him, but this deck is way more reliant on Confuse than it is on wanting Coulson on the table. Okay. So I didn't really feel like you need to recur counterintelligence. It's really on your first turn, you want to try to get counterintelligence under surveillance or somebody who can confuse the villain, and then you can stay down 2 turns really safely. So you're not getting the issue that Daniel had in his leadership deck where he couldn't stay down without the villain scheming out. That's really all it's in there for. And then later, if you get set up and you're not worried about it, there are energy resources in your deck. So it's not really hurting you. If I wasn't in solo, I would cut those and maybe add additional copies of Float Like a Butterfly so my teammates can get the benefit, or put in additional skilled investigators for those side schemes.
Sharing. Boy.
Yeah, I know. I'm not very much like Iron Man.
I mean, he is supposed to be a philanthropist, so there you go.
That's true. He is. He is a bit of a philanthropist.
But doesn't he have other people
like that
do
extremist
for
app?
him?
Not when it makes him look good.
Good point.
All right, cool.
It's awesome.
God, that's awesome. That is really a fun deck. If only I ever played yellow. No, that's fun. That's a lot of fun.
Yellow's the color of the poor. We're gonna play that.
Are you gonna try to bring us to green now?
Yeah, we're gonna switch over to
green
protection.
And gray.
That was mine. So this is a 40 card deck. There you go, folks. You're welcome. I might actually push it to 41 after listening to you guys. I think it could stand to have a Quinn Carrier.
Turns out to be inefficient, I guess.
this is a protection deck, but what I want to do is use some of the new cards. So I'm going with the Digging Deep and White Fox. Both of those are, if they get discarded from the top of your deck, you're going to put White Fox into play. Digging Deep is going to go into your hand, and Digging Deep's a wild resource. So you're going to discard cards from the top of your deck with his Futurist ability and with Repulsor Blast. So those are just sort of like, I want to try the new cards, so that's a little sub-theme there. All right, let's discard stuff and get it.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah, really fun.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Okay.
So the other thing I wanted to be able to do was taking advantage of his natural ready with the arc reactor and some other stuff. So, he's aerial. We've already talked about that. So we're going to put in cards that play off of that. And a new one out of the Angel Pack, newish, is Soaring Acrobatics, which is an upgrade. It's not a tech or anything, but when an aerial character you control uses a basic power, exhaust Soaring Acrobatics, that character gets +1 to that power for this use. So it's a one-time whatever, but you can push something up whenever he goes aerial and does a basic.
Yeah,
and
it's very versatile, which is good.
Right. So on top of that, we're talking about protection upgrades, right? Electrostatic armor, I got a couple in there. Energy barrier, there's 3 of those, and force field generator, there's 3 of those. So those are all additional tech upgrades that are going to come out and you're going to put out there. And then you're going to use repurpose, because that's what you do. That came out in Spider. So you're going to use, you're going to get out a force field generator, which costs 3. You're going to use repurpose, which costs 0. And you're going to discard that force field generator to give yourself a +3 to a chosen stat. And you're going to ready, right? Until the end of it says discard a tech upgrade you control. So you could do any of your tech upgrades, really, an extra boot or whatever.
Sure.
Ready your hero, choose thwart, attack, or defense until the end of the round. Your hero gets +X to the chosen power, where X is the upgrade's printed cost. So
that kind of triples the whole. Oh my god!
Right. So he's readied. You're gonna blow up a force field generator. Let's say he's gonna attack. He's a base 1.
Make it 3 time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He's a 4. You can add a Soaring Acrobatics for an extra 1. You make it a 5. You do it again. You could do it again. You do it again if you had enough repurposes and enough tech upgrades. On top of that, I also tucked in Ever Vigilance, which is the protection event. Costs 2. Play only if you're aerial, so you got to use those boots to go aerial. Hero action. Ready your hero. Remove 2 threat from the main scheme. So you can ready up, remove some threat, and attack again for 5 or whatever it is you had.
Crazy.
He's unreal in protection.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Oh my god, Steve.
So there's only 3 allies. So I'm channeling Mike here a little bit. War Machine, right? White Fox, who I'm never gonna play. I just want to have her discarded.
That's right.
And then Brother Voodoo, because he lets me search the top 5 cards in my deck for an event, which could be Ever Vigilant or Repurpose or Repulsor Blast or whatever it is I need, and then throw him under the bus and let him take a hit. We'll move on.
Look at you throwing away people like trash.
That's right.
That is so Iron Man.
What can you do for me now? And that's all I care about, right?
How about Joe Costa for theme?
Yeah,
throw her in front of something.
I didn't know that theme, so maybe pop her in. I did look at Vivian and some of these other ones that were like kind of Android-y, but it's like, no, I wanted to keep it nice and thin. I did the same thing that Scott did, build support, superpower training, because then you can go and superpower training lets you fetch, any of the upgrades.
I forgot about Soaring Acrobatics.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that's a fun tech.
I forgot about it.
And that's like probably the newest of the cards, I think. But
yeah, it is. It came in Angel.
Yeah. By the time this airs, there's going to be a couple games up on YouTube with me and Bill. I played this. It's kind of geared for like maybe a 2-player game, so that you can stay down for a round or 2. And I had a great setup. Couple, you get an early couple decent cards. I like getting Stark Tower. I'll prioritize that because the card you paid for it is a tech upgrade. You can just get it right back right away. Right, it only costs you 1. Things like that. So. And then you could defend to put the electrostatic armor to use, do a little ping damage because he can ready up with the arc reactor if you're not looking at a huge turn of a lot of wanting to do a whole bunch of repurposes or something like that. So, you know, energy, strength, genius. But unlike you guys, I mean, it has a bunch of energy resources, but it's not. I did not consider the resources when I built the deck specifically, other
Not
than
built-
making sure
not
there
built
was
for that attack. Right.
right. I
Which
wanted
you
to make
can
sure I could go aerial, so the ingenuity is in there. Digging deeps are wilds. You know, there's a bunch of there's
Right,
enough
right.
in there for you to be able to go aerial when on demand. I think. So I hope.
Would you consider dropping one electrostatic armor for a Dauntless with Iron Man's ability to get way above his original health? And
Oh yeah.
you have force field generators and energy barriers, so it seems like you're probably not taking very much damage, right?
Yeah,
That's-
that's true.
Good call.
I think I just what does Dauntless do?
Just whenever it gives you retaliate 1, basically, so you don't have to defend to do the ping damage back.
Oh yeah. Okay, if your hit points are equal to or greater than
Let's see.
30. Yeah, that'd be great.
What's the defensive skill? Is that the one that lets you cycle a green event back into your deck? Defensive training?
Yeah, defensive training, right? Is it a green event or is it a defensive event?
It's a
green protection
green
event.
support.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
only an
you're right.
event.
Defensive
protection.
training. 2 counters. It's alter ego. Exhaust this card. Remove a training counter from this. Choose a protection green event in your discard pile and shuffle into your deck. Yeah, that's not bad either.
No, that'd be a good one. That'd be a good one.
Yep, because you recur the ever vigilance and the repurpose.
And remember, Steve, you still have 5 more cards to put in this deck.
I know, right? Yeah.
if you want to be cool now,
If
you
you
want to
wanna
say
be
I'm being nerd, whatever.
Well, yeah.
It will be like the cool kids. You need 5 more cards.
So, Steve, this is a great deck. These were all great decks.
Yes.
There's a pool deck from Mike we should talk about.
Oh, we definitely should talk about.
But, you know, pool is just chaos and
Yeah, and we haven't talked pool on the show, so
we haven't. So I'm wondering how much we want to actually say about it, Steve. But
well, why don't we read
I can say a lot.
Daniel? Why don't you read the entire deck list, and that way people can kind of get a good feel for it. All right, the deck is called Iron Man's True Nature. It is a pool, and other than all the Iron Man cards, what are the pool cards that are in here?
well, there are Iron Man's 15s, and there's one pool card. Not my responsibility.
Oh, the theme is excellent.
Thank you, Mike.
I hadn't pulled it up and looked at it until just then.
That's
I
it.
didn't realize
That is it.
what it was.
Yeah, you thought
great.
he made a deck.
You thought it
No,
was a real deck.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was a real deck.
Now that's an event that you can play in alter ego, right? Interrupt when any amount of
That's
threat
true.
be placed on a scheme, you or your ally takes it as damage instead. So it could totally just put that damage right on War Machine and off we go.
Yeah. And
Yep. Thanks for the deck, Mike.
yeah. Now, Steve, I know Scott built probably an actual pool deck. Do we want to talk about it without having ever talked pool in the show before?
Yeah, Scott, can you give us a couple minute rundown of the deck?
Sure. Yeah. So this is called Iron Pain and the Asterisk, and
Excellent. Glad we're talking about it.
this is what he truly is.
45 cards. 45 cards.
It is 45 cards. I have a
Correct
type.
amount. We're changing the meta today, boys. You heard it here on Critical Encounters.
You're right, Josh. It started right at this moment.
Yes. So this is this is kind of classic pool, which is it's making use of bad icons on the board to buff up and use your sort of cheaper cards. So cards like I Got This is an event that for different icons. So if there's an acceleration icon, then you can remove 2 threat from a scheme. If there's an amplify icon, you can ready an ally you control. If there's a hazard, you can draw a card. And if there's a crisis, you can deal 3 damage to an enemy. It only costs 1. So if you have all those icons out, that's a huge amount of effect on the board for 1 cost. But if you only have one of those, it's like, okay, it's fine, right? It's not bad, but it's not great. So there's some cards like that in there. This deck is really building more into let's put some of those icons on the board with allies like Bob, Agent of Hydra, or Headpool, which are 2 allies. They don't take consequential damage. They have icons on them. So Bob has a acceleration icon. Headpool has an amplify icon. And from there, we're going to equip Tony with the best tech in the universe. Not actually tech, but it is a weapon, and that's laser swords.
Yeah, they're
The
not
laser
tech.
swords. They're not tech. Notably, there is no tech in the pool
It didn't
aspect.
make too much damn sense.
Yes, no, that would make way too much sense. Even the bazookas are not tech. I looked, I checked, right? No tech. So we're going to use the laser swords. There's a couple of plasma pistols in the deck because early on you just need to get tech out with him. So I added that stuff in there. I do have the symbiote suit. It is important to note that the symbiote suit cannot extend his hand size above 7, right? His hand size is locked at 7. It cannot go above 7. So if you have 6 techs in play and the symbiote suit, you still have a hand size of 7. You may not want to play that until later, but it gives you a hazard icon, which helps you with all your other cards. And the laser swords, if you get +1 attack for each icon in play to a maximum of a +4 attack. So for each crisis, acceleration, amplify, or hazard icon. You want to have a bunch of those out, buff up his attack, and Tony can fly into battle with Jedi lightsabers, right? That's the idea here, and hit a bunch. So Pool also has a card called Stick-to-itiveness, which is just another way of saying I'm too prideful to stop. And this makes sense for Iron Man.
Yeah.
You can spend a physical resource, exhaust this card, ready your hero. So you have the arc reactor to ready, you have stick-to-itiveness to ready, so you've got 2 readies per turn. The laser swords are adding 4 damage, ideally, so you're swinging for 5 3 times a turn once you're set up. 6 if you have the symbiote suit in play. I've added White Fox, but not the Digging Deeps, because Pool already has a lot of resources with self-confidence, self-control, self-preservation. If you've sustained less than 5 damage, you get triple resources from them. So very early, they're going to help you get those really expensive tech out onto the board.
And with Pepper Potts, right? Like you spend them for 3, and then Pepper Potts spends them again for 3. Yeah,
exactly.
So does that work like that? Can Pepper do that?
I don't think she can.
So
Pepper Potts says generate the resources of the top card in your discard pile. Self-confidence.
Oh, it's not the resource icon of the.
Nope, it does. It does not say the printed resources. It just says the resources on.
Oh my god!
And then it says double the number of resources this card generates if your identity. Blah blah blah.
So when I play this, I will take back what I said about never playing Pepper Potts.
Yeah, you'll pull Potts out.
That's what I'm saying is the interaction there that she will. Does the resource, and I think I'm probably overthinking this, but self-confidence, self-control, self-preservation, does that resource generation come from the act of discarding the card for resource generation, or is it always considered to be generating that many resources if you are in that state of that health?
I think you would treat it the same way as you treat the power in all of us or the power of aggression, where it doubles when it's used for a aspect card or the basic. Right,
Pepper
the right type.
interacts with those.
And
that way.
Pepper interacts with those already to generate 2 resources for that aspect. So
I was
think you
thinking
would treat it the same way.
What's the it's a weird interaction with like make the call where
right,
because it's letting you do certain things that
make the call is different because
exactly what it is.
Make the call says hey or something like that.
Yeah, it's pay the printed resources,
right?
Or pay the.
Well, it's you pay the cost, not the printed cost. It just says pay the cost of an ally in your discard pile. Yeah. And you can't use, say, for example, Power of Leadership to pay for a gray ally in your discard, because even though Make the Call is blue, you're not actually paying for Make the Call. You're paying for the ally. So there's some weird things there. Also, like Band Together doesn't actually generate resources. It has no resources on it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know how Band Together works with Pepper Potts. That would be an interesting question. I didn't check the FAQ on that, but
we'll find some way to struggle through.
Yeah.
Life will march forward.
Because that's the one that's like you get a wild for every ally you own.
It probably
has nothing on its own, right?
Well, Band Together says this card generates a wild for each ally you control to maximum.
So I think that would still work.
It still works,
right?
Yeah, because she just
like it would still work.
I mean, if all the other shenanigans you just said worked.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think it would.
Yeah.
Resources are odd cards because there's no.
They are.
There's just like a constant effect on them at all times. It's weird, but yeah, this is a great pool.
What a fun deck.
Yeah. It's a couple of Mulligan is in there. So Mulligan's another pool card that lets you basically draw a new hand if you haven't spent anything already. So
and
this is one where like if you don't get those techs in your first hand or in your Mulligan, you can just scrap and dig deeper, and that's kind of the idea there.
Yeah, or like later on, you can still do all of your things that are out, and then still Mulligan. Yeah.
Right. So you could you can go aerial with a card in your hand and then mulligan for new cards or something like that. I don't have a lot of resource sinks. That's one strategy. You know, you could like get all the things that let you spend resources, and there's some in pool that let you do that, as well as cards like Machine Man to like ditch into and do a bunch of damage and then mulligan and get new cards. I didn't go that route here. I really went with more getting those icons out, using the laser swords, and having a few more cards that'll make use of having those icons on the board. Like, I got this, or the laser swords. Yeah.
Let's see. I absolutely despise the pool aspect.
Well, let's not go there. We're talking about one terrible thing at a time.
And that is why it works in Iron Man.
Yeah, that's what two terrible things together have made it right. This is pretty simple.
Right. You got your Iron Man in my Deadpool. You got your Deadpool in my Iron Man.
Yeah, despising pools, another show.
There's some fan fiction on the internet that probably does that same thing.
So, on that note, I don't want to think about that kind of fan fiction. We will take all of these decks and we will link them, their Marvel CDB links, so people can take a look at them. Daniel, you're gonna have to write something up on yours, and then we'll put them out there for folks.
Oh my god!
I know you can say this is the deck I talked about.
Can it be flippant and dismissive?
It better be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, guys, it's been like 2 hours. This has been great.
This is awesome.
Really long.
Who knew that this was gonna happen?
Time to be done.
I mean, it's like one of the longest shows we've talked about Iron Man the most out of anybody, which I guess he would approve of. So, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, this was a long one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was long. Josh, thank you for coming on. Where can folks find you again out there?
Oh, people can find me wherever they get their podcast fix by just searching The Hills Have Nerds. That's a podcast I do with 3 other boys in the room, and then we have one guy that does our editing, Travis. So it's me, my buddy Aaron, my buddy Cody, and my buddy Lee, and we sit around and we talk about all types of different things of nerd culture and all the stuff that we enjoy. We talk about board games, tabletop RPGs, card games, movies, books, whatever have you, whatever the night takes us to. And we're having a blast. And if you wanted to come over and check us out, and wherever you get your podcasts at, just search for The Hills Have Nerds, or we're over on Facebook at The Hills Have Nerds. We started a YouTube, and we're putting stuff on there. It's done.
Folks, I encourage you to listen. These guys are awesome.
We
Great
ramble.
Show. Great show.
Great show. Absolutely.
And Scott, thank you very much for coming on and talking again.
My
with us.
pleasure, as always.
Where can the folks find you? Are you out there? Are you making stuff? Are you?
I am not. I'm just out there. I'm usually on Discord or Facebook, and just chatting up, and on the Solo Champions League, competing in there as well. My alliance, the Wild Men of Borneo, are out there trying to make our name.
All right. Well, hope you guys win. We had some Critical Encounter minion guys do pretty good in that league one season. So
yeah, Darcy's in there, and
Darcy's
putting up good numbers.
Yeah.
That's such a cool thing that Innsmouth Bear does to set that up.
It's
and
remarkable.
It's so awesome. Such a labor of love that dude does.
All right. Well, folks, again, Josh and Scott, thanks for coming on. Folks out there, do you have an Iron Man story you want to tell us? Do you have an Iron Man deck you want to share with us? We want to know. You can email us at criticalencounterspod@gmail.com. We are Critical Encounters on Facebook. You can find our YouTube, Twitch, or Patreon by searching for Critical Encounters Podcast. And on Discord, we are Vardane, Big Foam Loaf, Wandering Took, Winkster, and Lexicon. If you like our show, tell your friends. If you don't like our show, tell your enemies. Iron Man, take us out.
I'm the most intelligent, capable person on the planet. I'm not playing God. All this time, I've been playing human.
I'm back.
All right. I have to do that every episode. So there you go. It's your turn.
You've infected me. Thank you.
Dremis. Winkster. Winkster?
You misspelled that. Winkster.
Winkster. Winkster.
Winkster.
Welcome to issue 208. That's the wrong one.
Oh,
Let's try it again.
Okay, I'm gonna hover that.
I said issue, not episode, though, just to be clear.
That was good.
That was great.